Hey guys, my name is Murali, and this past week I drove DoorDash. I want to tell you about it. So I started this project mainly because I had a lot of free time and I enjoy driving. Just going vroom vroom down the street. I enjoy that. Oh my god. Yeah, so I have a fair amount of free time right now. School just ended and I have 2 months before med school starts. I have access to a car, and I thought this would be a pretty good use of that time because while people are ordering food and stuff like that, people aren't really going places. So Uber and Lyft wouldn't really be feasible right now because of the coronavirus pandemic that we're in. But I thought DoorDash would be a fun little exercise to spend some time, maybe make a little money. But also I just want to see how it goes and learn a bit about this sort of job and what it entails. When I started doing this, the questions I wanted to answer were mainly, is this type of job worth it? Is DoorDash worth it as like a full-time job, as a part-time job? Are you making enough money to survive? Is it fun doing? Is it worthwhile doing given that time? Also, do I want to keep doing it this summer and potentially while I'm in med school? So I can tell you all about the sign-up process and how I started. The sign-up process was pretty easy. You just download the app and they'll walk you through all the instructions. Mainly, the only thing you have to wait for is the background check, which honestly took a really fast amount of time. I filled out the background check, and I think within like 10 minutes they said that my background check had cleared, which means they already searched my information. If you haven't done background checks in the past, you might not know this, but most background checks take around a week or a few days at least to do and to process and to finish. But they finished this one within like 10 minutes, so I was very surprised by that. But I don't think that they're going through all of your records. It said that I had a vision impairment, so I wear glasses, so at least it was accurate. I was very surprised by how quick that was. Once you sign and allow that background check, you're pretty much ready to get started. By the time I downloaded the app and between my first ride, I think it was maybe 15 to 20, maybe 30 minutes in between that amount of time. So you can get started very quickly, and there isn't really an entry to barrier. And in order to make my life easier while doing DoorDash, I did some things, or I purchased some things or downloaded some apps. I can list those out here for you now. First and foremost, I got a car phone holder. So this is a phone holder that you can just insert into an air vent in your car, and it'll just hold the phone for you there. The first time I drove, I didn't actually have this, so I was just holding my phone, which is not safe. Don't do that. But I was just holding my phone and looking down a bit to look at my navigation. I do not recommend doing that. I recommend buying a $10 car phone holder off of Amazon or from Target or Walmart near you. And I think that'll make your life a ton easier just to have that phone on the side so you don't actually have to hold it or focus on where it is. You can just do that there. Personally, I also like using Google Maps when I navigate. Even though I do have an iPhone, in the past Apple Maps has a bit of a history with me of not always working out great. I know they've updated it since that time, but I still don't really trust it. So I've just been using Google Maps. So I set my presetting on the actual DoorDash app to navigate using Google Maps. And that was very key. So while you're doing a job that involves a lot of driving, your main cost is going to come from your car. So that includes gas, how many miles driven, the insurance that you have on that car, any other repair costs that you need to account for. So in order to do that, I downloaded this app called Stride. I'll link it down below. But this saved my life in terms of counting how many miles I was driving, because you hit start driving, and then when you start driving, it'll track where you've been and the paths you've taken and count that up for you, and then using its own rates of how much each mile costs you personally, it'll add all that up at the end, so then you can see your trip summary, see how many miles you've driven, and see how much those miles cost you personally. So that is what I counted as my expenses while I drove for DoorDash. DoorDash does have its own sort of tracking system. They'll tell you how far things are in terms of miles, but Stride made it just a lot easier for me to actually know the price and the cost of the time that I was spending doing DoorDash. Also, to make my life easier while I drove, I downloaded a bunch of podcasts that I enjoyed listening to just so I could play them while I was doing my orders and driving around town. So now I'm going to go into the details of how much I made and the rates that I made for all my orders that I did. I drove for about a week, but I didn't drive every day. I drove, I think, 4 out of those days, but I would sometimes do it for 2 or 3 hours per day. After those 4 days of driving, I mainly drove in the evening from around 4, maybe 5 p.m. to anywhere from 7 to 9 p.m. So that's the amount of time frame that I spent. So 4 days doing that. I spent around 7 hours driving, so around an hour per day. So the total amount of money that I made doing DoorDash so far was $102.60. The total number of miles that I drove was 153 miles. And in that time, the number of orders that I got was 10. Thanks to Stride, I knew how many miles that I drove, and because of that, I knew my expenses that I could write off. And so my total expenses was $87.41. So total subtracting my expenses was $15.19 after a week. And one other aspect of the income that I thought was very interesting and worthwhile to know was the amount of tips that I got. So for every order, your customer can opt in to tip you. That's just an option in the DoorDash app. And I didn't realize how much of your total income that they amount to. So the amount of tips that I got this entire week was $37.10, which was around 36% of my total income. So per mile, I made 67 cents. Per hour, I made $15.78, which is pretty reasonable. Actually, I was actually very surprised by that. I thought it was going to be closer to minimum wage, like $7.25, but it was actually twice that, which I was surprised by. And per order, I made around $10. In terms of the pay, I was very surprised by how little you're actually paid by DoorDash itself. The base rate is around $3 to $4, maybe $3.50 per order. And I felt that that was really low if you didn't have the extra peak pay that DoorDash gives you. So based on when you're actually dashing, whether it's lunchtime or at dinner time, if the demand is high, DoorDash will give you a peak pay of anywhere from $1 to $4 or $5. And personally, for me, I felt that when the dashing peak pay was only $1 or $2, it actually wasn't worth my time because you only get $5 per order without any tips. And I felt that was just a bit low. I felt like I wanted to get at least $7 per order for it to be worth my time personally. In addition, in terms of your income, for me, the costs were actually very high. I only netted $15 after this entire week, and that's because of the amount of miles that I drove and those expenses that were written to my car. So I live in a fairly suburban area, and while I may live close to some shopping centers and where there's restaurants, it doesn't take me too long to get to the restaurants that most people are ordering from. But then to deliver to other people can be anywhere from 10 to 15 miles, which isn't that much for like a single order. But if you're doing multiple orders, it adds up. So you're actually driving a very large amount of time, which is why my per mile profit was, or the amount of money that I was getting per mile was only 67 cents. That actually isn't that much. So obviously that'll be different if you live in a more densely populated area, in like a city or something like that. I live in a suburb of Milwaukee, so if I were to actually go to Milwaukee and DoorDash there, I think it might be a bit different. But then I also have to track how many miles it takes for me to get from my house to Milwaukee and then back. If you live in a densely populated area, your mile rate might actually be higher. One other issue about, I guess, for me that I had living in a suburban area was when I would go from a residential, or I would go from a shopping area to a residential area to deliver the food. But then once you're in that residential area, it's actually a lot harder to get orders, right? Because there aren't as many restaurants nearby. So during that time when you've dropped off an order, there can be a delay between you dropping that order and getting the next order because you're so far away from some restaurants. So I would recommend actually doing DoorDash with another ride service app, potentially Uber or Lyft, so that you can go from those residential areas to a more populated area and then switch off and go to DoorDash and stuff like that. Again, this would be very different if you lived in a more urban area or in a city, so that even if you are dropping food off in a residential like complex, you would still be fairly close to food options and might still get orders. All right, so next about the timing of doing DoorDash. So obviously you are delivering food to people, so you can only really do DoorDash when people want food. and that's around noon and dinner. There may be some late night things, but for the most part, most of your orders will come from the hours of 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 4:35 p.m. to 9 p.m. And those hours are pretty strict actually. So I tried just going out and trying to do DoorDash. I left my app on at around 2 p.m. I just was not getting any orders for like 30 minutes. And so that time is almost useless. You can't really make money off of that time. And then I tried going at 4 p.m. and it was really only until like 4:30 when I started getting orders. So those hour cutoffs are like very strict. So that actually limits how much money you can get per day to those specific times. And also those times can be rough because when other people want food is usually when you want food as well. So while you could eat while you're driving, I don't recommend doing that. You have to sacrifice your normal schedule or your normal eating schedule in order to deliver food for everyone else. So you would have to do it before 11 a.m. or after 1 p.m. and switch off when you eat your dinner to either be before 5 p.m. or after 9 p.m. And obviously you don't have to do the full 5 to 9 shift, so you could come back early and just start eating then. But that is something to think about, that you have to reschedule your own meals in order to do DoorDash. And next, I guess for me, the question was, would I enjoy the work? I thought that I would, and I actually did. I really enjoyed just driving around town and putting in a podcast and just chilling and listening to that. That's a fun time for me. If you also enjoy driving, then I would recommend the work itself for you. It can be fun to do that, and you feel like you're actually doing something and being useful, and you're making some money on the side. So I'd say that's pretty useful, and I enjoyed the work. Yeah. Also, a disclaimer for all of the numbers and stuff that I got. This is all during like pandemic time. I'm doing this in May of 2020, so the amount of money that I get or the number of orders that I get might change once the pandemic is over and people start going out more. I'd say the number of orders that you get might actually increase as people are like want maybe delivery options to work or something like that. But I'd say the amount of tips you get might also go down. I think a lot of people tipped a reasonable amount, more than they usually would, in order to compensate for working during a pandemic, and I appreciated that. Like I said, the amount of tips that I got actually amounted to 36% of my total income, but I think that is overinflated because of the time that we're in. On average, my tips were around $5. Some people gave $10. I don't think I had anyone give more than $10. Some people gave $3, so that's, I guess, the range that I got. Yeah, so thank you to everyone who tips. Definitely tip your servers. The amount of money that they're getting per order is only like $5 to $7 per order, so that's not really that much. So any tip that you give is appreciated, and I think it'll help those people along the way and make sure that they feel their time is worthwhile. So finally, I guess my decision about how I feel personally about doing DoorDash. I think the work is fun, but I don't think it's necessarily worth doing as a full-time thing for sure. Maybe not even as a part-time thing. If your goal is to make money. If your goal is to just make enough money to like cover expenses for that car or like for gas or something like that, I'd say that's absolutely fine. You can definitely go and do that. But if your goal is to have this be your career, I would say it would be hard to do it just doing DoorDash. I'd say you might also want to pair it with Lyft and Uber, but that is also based on where you are. If you're in an urban area, you're going to get, I think, more orders and be able to do better with DoorDash, Uber, and Lyft. But coming from a suburban area, I don't think it's feasible for me to do that. In terms of part-time, I'm going to be starting medical school in this fall in August. And in terms of timing, I don't know if I'll personally continue doing it when school starts, mainly because my schedule will be focused around when I study. And meal times, I think, will be a time where I eat for a bit, take a small break, and then go back to studying. And I don't think that those meal times will really be an opportunity for me to go out and then start doing an hour and a half of delivery in order to make maybe 10 to 20 bucks. So I don't think that time is necessarily worth it for me in terms of just financially and in a time manner. But I definitely would recommend it for you if you have that free time, if you're willing to use your meal times in order to deliver food, give access to a car, and if you're in an urban area. So that's all my conclusions for doing DoorDash. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, please let me know in the comment section below. If not, and if there's something else you'd like to see, you can let me know that as well down below. All right, bye.